Hi there, it is Mrs. Tremblay again. And we are now on lesson 2B.4, solving one-step multiplication and division equations. So in 2B3, we learned how to solve one-step addition / subtraction, even though we change it. So I'll just say one-step addition equations. The way you solve multiplication and division equations, it still takes one step. That's why it's called a one-step equation. However, the way that we do it is different because addition is different than multiplication and division. So our goal is still the same. We want to figure out the value of the variable that makes the equation true. And in order to find the value of the variable, you do have to get it by itself. So you learned there was an addition property of equality and a subtraction property of equality that says we can add or subtract the same number to both sides. There's also a division and multiplication property of equality. So the division property of equality says that we can divide both numbers by the same amount, or both sides of the equation by the same amount, and we'll get an equivalent equation. And the multiplication property of equality says that we can multiply each side and get the same exact equivalent equation. So using those properties to solve is what we're going to do today. Alright, in this first equation here, I have negative 6y equals 42. So basically I'm asking you, negative 6 times what equals 42? If this were a positive 6, and I said 6 times what equals 42, wouldn't you just take 42 divided by 6 to figure out that y was 7? So when you're trying to figure out negative 6, or when you multiply a number by, what do you multiply a number by to get the answer? All you really have to do is divide the two numbers that are given, right? That's basically what happens when you have a one-step multiplication equation. So with one-step multiplication equations, you'll still draw your line. And this is a multiplication equation because remember, when you have a number next to a letter, it means multiplication. All you have to do to figure out the value of the variable is divide both sides by whatever y is being multiplied by. Now, I realize in the last lesson you're used to adding the opposite. And if we tried that here, if you took negative 6y plus 6, are those like terms? No, they're not even like terms. So taking negative 6y plus 6 isn't going to get y by itself. And maybe you're thinking, what if I took negative 6y plus positive 6y? Well, if you did that, negative 6y plus 6y equals 0. So then you have 0 equals 42, and it doesn't. And then y is gone. So the only way to solve this is to divide. So with a multiplication one step, we're going to divide both sides by the coefficient of the variable, by whatever the variable is being multiplied by. And here's why. I can divide on like terms. Negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1, right? What's 1 times y? Yes, y. And the thing is, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So this is that division property of equality. I'm going to divide this side also by negative 6. So we're not changing any signs. I need to divide negative 6 by itself to get 1. If I divided negative 6 by positive 6, I'd have negative 1y. And we don't want to know what negative y is. We just want to know what y is. All right, 42 divided by negative 6 is negative 7. So that's our one step. To make sure that you're right, you can plug them all in. If y is negative 7, then negative 6 times negative 7 should give you a positive 42. A negative times a negative is a positive, so this is right. Okay, let's try another one. This time the x is on the other side. It's okay. Your job is to get this x by itself. So in order to get x by itself, we have to divide by whatever x is being multiplied by. That means I'm going to divide both sides by negative 11. Again, no sign changing. Negative 11 divided by itself is 1, and 1x is x. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. Negative 121 divided by negative 11 is 11. So 11 equals x. If this is right, then negative 121 should equal negative 11 times positive 11. And a negative times a positive is a negative, so this is right. All right, and the next one, just to kind of let you see that they don't always come out nice and perfect, which is fine, I'm going to draw the line. X is being multiplied by 4. To undo that, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 4, because that's what x is being multiplied by. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 1x is x. And when you take a negative 18 divided by a positive 4, first off, I'm going to get a negative. And 4 goes into 18 4.5 times. You're allowed to get decimal answers. It's not a big deal. To check it, again, I'm not going to check every single one, but to check it, all you need to do is take 4 times negative 4.5 and make sure you get negative 18. And you do. All right, next one. I'm going to draw my line. I have 25 hundredths right next to n. That means I'm multiplying 25 hundredths by n. To figure out 25 hundredths times what equals negative 20, all I need to do is divide by whatever n's being multiplied by. Again, no sign changing. So 25 hundredths divided by 25 hundredths is 1, and 1 times n is n. Now you need to divide this side by 25 hundredths as well. I hope I didn't throw you off by not putting that 0 in front. It means the same thing. So when you take negative 20 and you divide it by 25 hundredths, this might seem crazy, but you're going to get negative 80. And think about it, you're trying to figure out how many quarters there are in $20. That's basically what that problem means. So there would be 80 quarters. And to check it, you would take 25 hundredths times negative 80, and I know a positive times a negative is a negative. And if you did that problem, you would get negative 80, I promise. All right, this one, I always save the confusing ones for last because we kind of build it up, right? I have negative p here equals negative 24. And you might think, well, it's already solved, the variable's by itself. But it's not. It's got a little negative sign in front of it. And I need to get rid of it. So what's going to be helpful to you is thinking back to like terms. When you had negative p, didn't that mean negative 1p? Yeah, so you need to see this as negative 1p. And now, oh yeah, okay, p is being multiplied by negative 1. To undo multiplying by negative 1, we divide by negative 1. Negative 1 divided by itself is a positive 1. And negative 24 divided by negative 1 is a positive 24. So if you see a negative variable, remember it means you have negative 1 of that variable. You can divide both sides by that negative 1 and then it goes away. So those are one-step multiplication equations. So again, all you had to do was divide by whatever the variable was being multiplied by, just like when you had only positive numbers, the same concept. For this next one, this is called a division equation because the variable is being divided by something, right? So we call it a division equation. If this were a positive 7, to figure out what number divided by 3 was 7, wouldn't you just need to multiply the 7 by the 3? Right? Because multiplication and division are inverses. So one more time, if you wanted to figure out negative 6 times what is 42, you can just divide those two values to find the value of y. If I want to know what number divided by 3 is negative 7, all I need to do is multiply by 3. So that's this multiplication property of equality. It says that multiplying both sides of an equation by the same amount doesn't change the value of it. It's still creating two equivalent equations. So to figure out what number divided by 3 equals negative 7, we're still going to draw our line. All we need to do is multiply each side by whatever the variable is being divided by. So the reason this works, if I gave you like 3/4 times 1/2, wouldn't you multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, and simplify? So now I'm giving you 3 times n over 3. When you're trying to solve multiplication of fractions, you put a 1 underneath, and you'd multiply across the top, and you'd multiply across the bottom, right? Well, when you do that, you get 3n over 3, and I'm going to write this multiplication by 3 on this other side as well. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 1n is n. Negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. So I'm not going to make you write out this step every single time, but I do want you to understand why it works. When you multiply this side by 3, you're actually cross-canceling those 3's, and you get the variable by itself. Just like in this, you're dividing a number by itself, and that gives you 1. So with multiplication and division equations, your goal is kind of to get a 1n or 1y, because 1n or 1y is the same thing as n or y. All right. And is negative 21 divided by 3 negative 7? I'm asking you this. If you plug it in, does it work? Yes, it does. All right, the next one, this time the y is on the other side. That's okay. I'm going to draw my line. If I want to figure out what number divided by 5 is negative 12, I need to get rid of this 5. To do that, I'm going to multiply each side by 5. Because this allows me to cross-cancel those 5's, and I'd get y over 1, which is y. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And when you take negative 12 times 5, you get negative 60. And if you took negative 60 divided by 5, you would get negative 12. And even if you already knew that in your head, I need you to show me the work. You have to show your steps because this is just the first baby bear equation here. We're going to get to more difficult ones towards the end of this chapter, and I need you to have strategies to deal with that because you're not going to be able to use guess and check at that point unless you want to take a really long time to do your homework, and usually people don't. All right, in this next problem, there's a negative sign right smack dab in the middle, okay? And you need that to go away too. We need that to go away. So remember in the past we said that if you see a negative in the middle, it could be in a negative x over 3 or x over negative 3. We said it can go with the top or with the bottom. And when we were adding and subtracting fractions, we wanted to keep a common denominator, so we always put it with the top. When you're dealing with this, if your goal is to get x by itself, why on earth would you go put a negative sign in front of it if you want it by itself? So when you see a division equation like this with that negative sign in the middle, just cross it off and put it with the bottom. Because it can go with either one. Either one would give you the same exact value. And we talked a lot about that in previous chapters. So put it with the bottom. We can talk further about it in class if necessary. But if it doesn't matter if it goes with the top or with the bottom, put it with the bottom so that you're not putting something else with that x that you want by itself. All right. So we said before, whatever x was being, or whatever the variable was being divided by, you just need to multiply both sides by it. So that means I am going to multiply both sides of this by negative 3. I'm just going to write that down here. Times negative 3 times negative 3. Those 3's, if I had it written up here, if I had space, would cross cancel, and x would be by itself, which is its goal. Negative 15 times negative 3 is a positive 45. And 45 divided by negative 3 is negative 15. So it checks out. It's right. All right, last one of these, and then we'll just do a couple of word problems. I'm going to draw my line. Again, see that negative right in the middle right there? I'm going to cross it off, and I'm going to put it with the bottom. Then I'm not trying to get rid of a negative in front of that m. All right, so m is being divided by negative 6. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 6 because that cross cancels, and now m is alone. And when you take 4.2 and multiply it by a negative 6, you're going to get a negative answer, and 4.2 times 6 is 25.2. To check your work, you would just take 25.2 divided by negative 25.2 divided by negative 6, and you would see that you do get a positive 4.2. All right, so one more time just to recap. If you see a multiplication equation, all you have to do is divide both sides by whatever the variable is being multiplied by. If you see a division equation, all you have to do is multiply each side by whatever the variable is being divided by. There's no sign changing here because I need to divide the number by itself to get 1x, or I need to be able to cross cancel the same number so that I can get the variable divided by a positive 1. So no sign changing. Can you tell that that's the most common mistake? Because I think I've mentioned that a lot of times. All right, turn your page. We only have 4 of these. And last time we went over some keywords for addition and subtraction. Our keywords for multiplication are product of and multiplied by. So if I ask you to find the product, I'm asking you to find the result of a multiplication problem. The keywords for division are quotient of or divided by. So if I ask you to find the quotient, it means you have to divide. And remember, order matters with division. So whatever order I ask you to find the quotient, you need to make sure you're doing that. All right, so we're going to write an equation and solve it. Okay, so a number y multiplied by negative 2.2 is 11. So y multiplied by negative 2.2, you might want to write out y times negative 2.2. But when we're multiplying numbers and letters, we talked about how the number always gets to go first. So the best way to say y multiplied by negative 2.2 is negative 2.2y. That means the same exact thing. And order doesn't matter with multiplication. So numbers get to go first, coefficients first. And when I say it is 11, that means it's equal to 11. There's your equation. Now all you have to do is solve it. So we're going to draw our line. Because y is being multiplied by negative 2.2, In order to get y by itself, I have to divide by negative 2.2. So we divided both sides by the coefficient of y. We didn't change any signs, right? Because a negative divided by a negative gives me that positive 1y, which is the same as y. And 11 divided by negative 2.2 gives me a negative 5. If you don't believe me, check it out. Do it in your calculator, write it out the long way. But 11 divided by 2.2 is 5, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So that one's done. All right, next one. The product of, so product means multiplication, right? The product of negative 12 and a number p. So that means I want to take negative 12 times p. And that is 60. So the product of negative 12 and a number p is 60. So negative 12p equals 60. Draw your line. Now right now, p is being multiplied by negative 12. In order to isolate the p, you need to divide by negative 12. Because negative 12 divided by negative 12 is 1. 1p is p. And 60 divided by negative 12, well, 60 divided by 12 is 5. And a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So they're both negative 5. I don't even think I did that on purpose. It just happened. It's crazy. All right. Next one I have a number n divided by 8. So divided by, yes, means division. And n divided by 8, yes, you could write out n, division sign 8. But usually we're going to see it written like this. So n divided by 8, that's fine, is negative 7. You can't put the 8 over the n because I want n to be divided by the 8. And in order to solve this, whatever n is being divided by, we multiply both sides by that same exact amount without changing any signs so that I can cross cancel that same amount because remember, it's really like 8 over 1 times n over 8. And n divided by 1 is n. And negative 7 times 8 is negative 56. At least it's got a 5 in it. It made the answer come out to 5 this time. So n is negative 56. And negative 56 divided by 8 is negative 7, so it's good. All right, last one of these, I say the quotient of. So you have to know the quotient means division. The quotient of a number m and 5. So that means m divided by 5. The quotient of m and 5 is negative 9. So if m is being divided by 5, all I have to do is multiply each side by 5. Those 5's cross cancel, so m is isolated. It's all by itself. And negative 9 times 5 is a negative 45, because when you multiply a positive and a negative, you get a negative. You are done. See you later.